There comes a time in every person's life when they feel a shift, when they know something is about to change. We may not know when or how, but God, in His infinite wisdom, always leaves signs that He is preparing to do something extraordinary in your life. The first sign is when God stirs an unrest within your spirit. You can no longer find satisfaction in the things that once brought you comfort. Your soul begins to yearn for something greater, something more meaningful. It's a holy discomfort, a sense that where you are now is not where you're meant to stay. God is moving you, calling you out of the ordinary into the extraordinary. He is stretching you, preparing your heart for a transformation. When you feel that stirring, don't ignore it. That is God whispering that He's about to move in your life. The second sign is when God starts closing doors. Doors you thought were the very path to your destiny. Maybe it's a job opportunity that slipped through your hands, a relationship that ended, or a plan that fell apart. In those moments, it's easy to feel frustrated, to question why things didn't work out the way you hoped. But let me tell you something. When God closes a door, it's not rejection, it's redirect. He's steering you away from something that wasn't meant for you and towards something that is far greater than you can imagine. Don't fear the closed doors. Trust that God is guiding your steps toward His divine plan for your life. And finally, the third sign is when God surrounds you with new opportunities and connections. After the doors have closed, after the discomfort has set in, watch for the people and opportunities He brings into your life. These are the divine appointments, the moments when God aligns your path with others who will help lead you into your next season. You may not always recognize these moments as they happen, but in time you'll look back and see that God was orchestrating every detail, positioning you for the breakthrough that's about to come. When God is about to change your life forever, He leaves signs. He unsettles your spirit. He closes doors, and He brings new opportunities. God is always working in the background, preparing you for what's next. So keep your heart open, your eyes focused on Him, and know that His plans for you are beyond anything you could ever dream. Spiritual unrest. When God is about to bring change, He creates a sense of discomfort and restlessness, urging you to move beyond your current situation. Closed doors, unexpected disappointments, and lost opportunities are not setbacks, but divine redirections leading to something greater. New opportunities and connections. After closing doors, God brings the right people and circumstances into your life to guide you into your next season. Trust in God's plan. Even when you don't understand His ways, trust that He is orchestrating every detail for your good. Faith over fear. Instead of fearing change, embrace it with faith, knowing that God's plans are far better than your own. God's timing is perfect. The transformation may not happen immediately, but when it does, it will align perfectly with God's purpose for your life. When God is preparing to change your life, one of the first signs is an internal stirring, a spiritual unrest that disrupts your sense of normalcy. You may feel a restlessness deep within your soul, a feeling that where you are now is not where you are meant to stay. It's as if the things that once brought you joy and fulfillment no longer satisfy you. The job that once excited you may now feel like a burden. The routine that once gave you comfort now seems empty. Even relationships and environments that once felt secure may begin to feel out of place. This is not coincidence, This is not mere frustration. This is God moving in your heart, preparing you for something greater. God often allows discomfort because he knows that without it, we would settle. We are creatures of habit, and when life feels safe and predictable, we resist change. But God is not interested in keeping us where we are. He is interested in taking us to where he has called us to be. That's why he disturbs the waters of our hearts. He shakes up our routines. He allows us to feel uneasy about things we once embraced. This holy unrest is not meant to harm us, but to push us forward. It is the first step toward transformation. Think about how God worked in the lives of those he called in the Bible. Moses was comfortable tending sheep in the wilderness, but God placed a burden in his heart for the suffering of his people. He could no longer ignore the call to lead. Nehemiah was a cupbearer, but when he heard about the destruction of Jerusalem, his spirit was troubled, and he knew he had to act. The disciples were fishermen, content with their daily lives. But when Jesus called them, something within them stirred, and they left everything behind. Every great move of God begins with a sense of spiritual discomfort, a divine nudge that refuses to be ignored. When you start feeling this unrest, don't resist it. Don't dismiss it as just a phase or a passing thought. Instead, seek God in prayer. Ask him what he is trying to reveal to you. Pay attention to the desires he is placing in your heart. You may start to feel drawn toward a new path, a new purpose, or a new direction. You may feel a longing for something more, something deeper, something that aligns with his will. That is God preparing you for a change, positioning you for the next step in his plan. This stirring is not always easy to endure. It can bring uncertainty and even fear, but God never stirs your heart without a purpose. He never calls you out of a place of comfort without leading you into something better. If you feel this unrest today, it is a sign that God is moving, working behind the scenes, and setting you up for a transformation that will bring you closer to his divine purpose for your life. When God is about to bring a major shift in your life, he often begins by closing doors. Doors you thought were meant to stay open. Doors you prayed would lead you forward. Doors you worked hard to walk through. It can feel frustrating, even painful, when opportunities slip away, relationships end, or plans crumble. You might find yourself asking, why would God take this away? Why would he allow something I wanted so badly to disappear? But what feels like rejection is often divine redirection. When a door closes, it is not to harm you, but to guide you toward something greater than you could imagine. God sees what we cannot see. He knows the future, the obstacles ahead, and the dangers that lie beyond certain choices. Sometimes we chase after things that are not meant for us, and in his love, he blocks the path. We may not understand it at the time, but looking back, we often realize that God's closed doors were actually his protection. That job you didn't get may have kept you from a situation that would have drained your spirit. That relationship that ended may have prevented years of heartache. That plan that fell apart may have made room for something even better. The Bible is filled with moments when God closed doors for a greater purpose. When the Israelites left Egypt, they might have expected a direct route to the promised land, but God led them another way, closing off paths that would have led to destruction. When Paul and his companions wanted to preach in certain areas, the Holy Spirit blocked them because God had a different mission for them. Even Joseph, who had dreams of greatness, faced closed doors when he was sold into slavery and imprisoned. But every closed door was a step toward his destiny, as a ruler in Egypt. One of the hardest things about closed doors is that they often come without explanation. You may never know why a certain opportunity didn't work out, but that is where faith comes in. Trusting God means believing that He knows what He is doing, even when you don't understand. It means surrendering your plans and accepting that His ways are higher than yours. It means choosing to see a closed door not as a punishment, but as a sign that He is leading you somewhere better. Instead of becoming discouraged when doors close, shift your perspective. Ask God, what are you preparing me for? Where are you leading me? Pay attention, because when one door closes, another one is being prepared. Often the closed doors are the very things that push you toward the breakthrough you've been waiting for. The delay, the disappointment, the detour, they are not meant to break you, but to position you for God's perfect plan. When God closes a door, it is always because He has something better in store. Even when you can't see it now, trust that He is working for your good. When God is about to change your life, He doesn't just close doors, He also brings new opportunities and connections. After a season of uncertainty, when things have felt confusing or discouraging, He begins to open doors that align with His plan for you. These opportunities may not always look the way you expected, and the people He places in your life may not be who you imagined. But God is strategic in the way He moves. Every opportunity and connection He brings is part of His greater purpose, guiding you toward the next chapter He has written for you. One of the ways God does this is by introducing you to people who will play a key role in your journey. These divine connections can come in unexpected ways. A mentor who speaks wisdom into your life, a friend who encourages you to step out in faith, or even a stranger whose words confirm something God has already placed in your heart. These are not coincidences. They are orchestrated by God. Think about how David met Jonathan, who became a lifelong friend and support in his journey to becoming king. Or how Ruth met Boaz, leading her to a future she never could have imagined. Divine connections are not about luck. They are about God placing the right people in your path at the right time. God also brings new opportunities, doors that open in ways you never anticipated. Maybe you've been praying for direction and suddenly a new job offer appears. Perhaps you've been searching for purpose and an opportunity to serve in a way that aligns with your gifts presents itself. Sometimes these opportunities seem small at first, but they lead to greater things. When Peter and the other disciples were fishing all night without success, Jesus told them to cast their nets on the other side. That one simple act of obedience led to an overwhelming catch, a symbol of how following God's leading opens the door to abundance. It's important to be spiritually aware when these opportunities and connections come, because they don't always arrive in the way you expect. Sometimes the new thing God is doing requires you to step outside of your comfort zone. It may require you to take risks, to leave behind what is familiar, or to trust Him in ways you never have before. You may even be tempted to overlook an opportunity because it doesn't look as grand or as certain as you had hoped. But when God is leading, you don't have to understand everything. Your job is to follow in faith. One of the greatest dangers is holding on to the past so tightly that you miss what God is doing now. If you are so focused on the doors that closed, you may not see the ones that are opening. If you are too caught up in what you lost, you may miss the blessings He is placing in front of you. Be open, be expectant, and trust that when God brings new opportunities and connections, they are always for your good and His glory. Trusting in God's plan is one of the greatest challenges of faith because it requires surrendering control. Human nature desires certainty, clarity, and a clear roadmap of the future, but God often calls his people to walk in faith, not by sight. He does not always reveal the full picture, but he asks for trust. Trust that he is working even when circumstances seem unclear. Trust that he knows what is best even when life feels uncertain. And trust that his timing and direction are always perfect. One of the biggest obstacles to trusting God's plan is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of stepping into something unfamiliar. It is easy to trust when everything is going smoothly, but faith is truly tested when life takes an unexpected turn, when doors close, when plans fall apart, when the path ahead is unclear. That is when trust becomes essential. In those moments, it is tempting to take matters into your own hands, to force your own solutions, or to doubt that God is leading it all. But throughout the Bible, God reminds his people that his ways are higher than human ways, and his thoughts are higher than human thoughts. Abraham was called to leave his homeland without knowing where he was going. He had no clear map, no specific details, only a promise from God. It would have been easy to hesitate, to question, to demand more answers before stepping out in faith. But Abraham chose to trust, and because of his obedience, he walked into the destiny that God had prepared for him. The same is true for every person who surrenders to God's plan. The path may not always make sense, but God sees the full picture. Joseph experienced a series of painful setbacks: betrayal by his brothers, slavery, false accusations, and imprisonment. It must have seemed like his dreams were shattered, that God's promises would never come to pass. But through every trial, God was positioning him, preparing him for a purpose far greater than he could have imagined. If Joseph had given up, if he had lost faith in God's plan, he would have never seen the fulfillment of his destiny as a ruler in Egypt. His story is a reminder that even when life seems unfair, even when everything appears to be going wrong, God is still in control, weaving every situation together for a greater purpose. Trusting God's plan means choosing faith over fear, surrender over control, and patience over anxiety. It means believing that even in the silence, even in the waiting, even in the disappointments, God is still working. It means understanding that he is not only preparing blessings for you, but he is also preparing you for those blessings. There is a purpose behind every delay, a reason for every redirection, and a divine plan unfolding, even when you cannot yet see the outcome. Trust does not mean you will always have the answers, but it does mean you can walk forward in confidence, knowing that God is leading you exactly where you are meant to be. Faith over fear is one of the greatest challenges in the Christian walk. Fear has a way of creeping into the heart, whispering doubts, raising uncertainties, and making the unknown seem overwhelming. It convinces people to stay in their comfort zones, to resist change, and to doubt the plans God has for them. But faith calls for something different. Faith calls for trust when the path is unclear. Faith calls for courage when fear tells you to turn back. Faith calls for obedience, even when logic and emotions say otherwise. One of the greatest examples of faith over fear is found in the story of Peter walking on water. When Peter saw Jesus walking toward him on the sea, he was bold enough to step out of the boat. In that moment, his faith was greater than his fear. But as soon as he took his eyes off Jesus and focused on the wind and waves, fear took over and he began to sink. This is exactly how fear works. It takes attention away from God's promises and magnifies the obstacles. The more someone focuses on their problems, the bigger they seem. But the more they focus on God, the smaller those fears become. Fear often paralyzes people right before their breakthrough. It convinces them that they are not ready, that they are not good enough, or that they will fail if they take the next step. It keeps them stuck in situations that no longer serve them because the unknown seems too risky. But God does not call people to live in fear. Over and over again in Scripture, He says, "Do not be afraid." He commanded Joshua to be strong and courageous as he led the Israelites into the promised land. He told Gideon, who doubted himself, that he would be with him in battle. He assured Moses that even though Pharaoh seemed powerful, God's power was far greater. Every time fear tried to hold someone back, God responded with a promise of His presence and guidance. Fear is not from God. It is a tactic of the enemy to keep people from stepping into their purpose. The enemy knows that when someone moves in faith, God moves with them. That is why fear often shows up the strongest right before a breakthrough. It is an attempt to stop progress, to create doubt, to make the step forward seem impossible. But faith says, even though I don't see the whole picture, I trust God. Faith says, even if I feel afraid, I will still move forward. Faith says, I believe God's plan is greater than my fears. Choosing faith over fear does not mean there will never be uncertainty or moments of doubt. It means making a conscious decision to trust God more than circumstances. It means stepping out even when fear is present, knowing that God will not let you fall. Fear may knock on the door, but faith refuses to let it in. Fear may whisper doubts, but faith declares that God's promises are true. The more faith grows, the less power fear has. God's timing is perfect, even when it doesn't align with human expectations. In a world that values instant results, waiting on God's timing can feel difficult, even frustrating. There are moments when it seems like nothing is happening, when prayers feel unanswered, when the future looks uncertain. It is in these moments that faith is tested the most. But God is never late, never caught off guard, and never in a rush. He moves with divine precision, orchestrating events in ways that are far beyond human understanding. One of the greatest examples of God's perfect timing is found in the story of Lazarus. When Lazarus became sick, his sisters Mary and Martha sent word to Jesus, expecting him to come immediately and heal their brother. But Jesus did not arrive when they expected him to. In fact, by the time he reached them, Lazarus had already been dead for 4 days. To everyone watching, it seemed like Jesus was too late. The situation appeared hopeless. But Jesus had a greater plan, one that would not only heal Lazarus, but also demonstrate the full power of God by raising him from the dead. What looked like a delay was actually divine timing for a greater miracle. Many times people pray for something and expect an immediate response. They seek breakthrough, change, and open doors, but when nothing happens right away, they begin to doubt. They wonder if God has forgotten them, if He has abandoned their prayers. But just because something is delayed does not mean it is denied. Sometimes the waiting season is necessary because God is preparing something far greater than what was originally asked for. Sometimes He is strengthening faith, refining character, and positioning everything perfectly so that when the answer comes, it is even better than imagined. Abraham was given a promise that he would be the father of many nations. Yet he and Sarah waited decades for Isaac to be born. Joseph had dreams of leadership, but before stepping into his destiny, he endured betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment. David was anointed as king while he was still a shepherd, but he had to wait years before taking the throne. In every case, the waiting was not wasted, it was preparation. God was working behind the scenes, aligning every detail so that when the promise was fulfilled, it was in the perfect season. Trusting in God's timing requires patience and faith. It means believing that He is working even when no evidence is visible. It means choosing to praise Him in the waiting, knowing that what He has planned is far greater than anything that could be forced in human strength. Often, when people try to rush ahead of God, they end up with something less than what He intended. But when they wait on Him, when they trust His process, the outcome is always worth it. The delays, the unanswered prayers, the seasons of waiting, they are not wasted. They are part of a bigger picture, one that only God can see. And when the time is right, everything will come together exactly as He planned. When God is about to change your life, He always leaves signs. He stirs your spirit with a holy unrest, making you uncomfortable with where you are because He is preparing to take you somewhere new. He closes doors, removing things that no longer serve His purpose in your life so that you are not tempted to stay where you don't belong. He opens new doors, introducing you to divine connections and opportunities that align with His greater plan. Through it all, He calls you to trust Him completely. Even when the path is unclear, even when fear tries to hold you back, even when waiting feels unbearable, every step of the way, He is working, preparing, refining, and leading you into the next season He has ordained for you. When God is moving in your life, the journey is rarely easy. Change often comes with uncertainty. And stepping into the unknown requires faith. There will be moments when fear whispers that you are not ready, that you are not capable, that you should turn back. There will be times when waiting feels endless, when you wonder if God has forgotten you, when you question if His promises will ever come to pass. But through every trial, every delay, and every closed door, He is shaping you for what is to come. He is strengthening your faith, building your endurance, and molding you into the person He created you to be. The greatest breakthroughs often come after seasons of testing. Just as gold is refined in fire, faith is refined through challenges. The discomfort, the disappointments, the detours, they're not meant to break you, but to prepare you. If Joseph had given up in prison, he would have never reached the palace. If David had abandoned his calling when facing Goliath, he would have never become king. If Peter had allowed fear to keep him in the boat, he would have never experienced the miracle of walking on water. The enemy will always try to discourage you right before your breakthrough, but that is when you must hold on the tightest, trusting that God is leading you into something far greater than you can imagine. Every time God shifts your life, it is because He is taking you to a higher level. He does not allow change to come for no reason. He does not close doors without having something better in store. He does not stir your spirit without a purpose. Every change, every transition, every challenge is leading you towards something greater. It may not always make sense in the moment, but when you look back, you will see His hand in every detail. You will see how He orchestrated every step, how He aligned every opportunity, how He turned every setback into a setup for His perfect plan. If you sense that God is preparing to change your life, don't resist it. Don't let fear keep you from stepping into the next season he has for you. Don't let doubt rob you of the blessings he is preparing. Trust that his timing is perfect, that his ways are higher, and that his plans for you are far greater than anything you could create on your own. Even when you don't understand, even when the journey feels uncertain, even when waiting feels long, know that God is working. He is not finished with you. He is leading you into something new, something greater, something beyond what you could ask or imagine. Stay faithful, stay expectant, and be ready, because when God is about to change your life, it will be in ways more powerful and beautiful than you ever dreamed.